Hey everyone, it's Joe Glines here in Dallas, Texas.
Yeah, and Jackie here from Copenhagen, Denmark.
And this is our 44th AutoHotkey webinar. Wow, that's a lot of webinars.
Yeah,
And obviously we're a little more loose now in what we're doing. And we're just trying to really have more live coding things where we sit in and get into code instead of teaching a given topic. We both have websites with resources out there. You can see them, check them out. There's 38 registrants. Everyone starts off muted just because it'd be mayhem if we all tried to talk. Make sure you use the chat, and then when Jackie or I, one of us is talking, the other one's watching the chat, and vice versa. It really helps having someone else to do that with you.
yeah.
But just if we don't answer your question right away, we'll get there. So just bear with us. The other option is just you can't. I feel like I trust most of the people here. You can unmute yourself. So I think it's set up. It should be set up where you can. Let me make sure I did that. And we just don't want everyone trying to talk at one time is the main reason. And I can't see that. I'll wait until. Oh, here we go. It's over here. Yo, it is set up. Okay, so yeah, so people can unmute themselves. And let's get going here. So I was actually struggling. I had a hard time finding an example of a script to highlight. And so I was looking at the forum, then I finally started looking at my own folders on my computer. And so I had, is it this the right one? No. So it's this one. This folder here, it's on WMI, which is, I need to look it up. What is it? Windows Management Interface? Do you remember, Jackie?
Yeah, something like that, yeah. Windows Management in something. I can't remember it either.
Yeah, let's see if this guy cited, mentions WMI tasks. And maybe someone will throw it into the chat here if they recall. But and here, it took me actually a while to find this post. I think this is where I got them from. So don't hold me to that entirely, but I looked at a couple and they looked the same. And I thought it was just a great example of, like, let's say I wanted to look at my information about my BIOS. And I'm going to edit this first. So we'll pull it up here. Here's the code. You're connecting to a COM object right here. So we actually... So we're getting it, connecting to it, and then we execute this query against it and pull specific pieces of data. Here they're just building a message box with a bunch of text and the values to it. So let's go ahead and run this. And it just gets information, rips it out of your computer, out of Windows. And I thought this was a really good example. You can see there's a lot of different things that you can look up and value. So if you especially worked in an IT group and at a company, some of these things would be pretty cool to have at the tips of your fingers. You could programmatically grab exactly, customize one exactly to what you want to know and have it at the tips of your fingers. I don't know, I'd want to have it list all installed fonts, but I suppose I might. But yeah, you can get information that I'm going to guess other languages could do something like this. But it's pretty cool that each one of these examples just walks through, and you could start piecemealing them together and do exactly what you want in a given script.
Yeah, it's not nice having examples of it out there, right? So some of them might even have other functions in other DLLs and other ways and other APIs to get the information, but it's still it's a pretty surefire way of getting a lot of the information people sometimes need.
Yeah, apparently I have I do run this. I had an AMD. I bought a pretty nice processor not that long ago. I rebuilt my whole system, or built a new system. Anyway, so that was a fun one just to play. Windows Management Instrumentation. Wow.
Yeah, that's the WMI. Yeah. But this is a good amount of the information that you have there is hardware related, right? So.
Yeah. Right. Obviously, Windows is connecting to your computer, right? So it knows all that stuff. It has to, and whatever OS needs to know that stuff. So I guess we're boring. Someone dropped out. No. So that was the script highlight. Now let's go ahead. Let me close this. I will. You know what? While I'm thinking about it, let me just do it here in case anyone wants to grab it. I zipped all my files, and I'll put both of these in there. You can get the source, which is just he breaks them out one at a time, and I put them in separate files, and they're all in the zip file. So I'm going to put this in the chat, so if anyone wants either way, you can go grab them either way. All right. The next one. And you know what? Let me copy and paste this whole thing in the chat while we're here, and I'll send out some resources, especially if we develop some other code after. But as I mentioned earlier, we did a webinar on using COM. And this was I think, if I remember right, I think it was our second webinar, Jackie. That
could have been, yeah. I don't remember exactly, but yeah.
Yeah. I have a lot of tutorials where walking through just very specific things separately, which is most people find really helpful to break it down to a very small little piecemeal of it. And then this is my Excel function library. And I happen to also find this other, so both of these are Excel libraries. This guy has a different one, so you can check out either one of those. These are great, of course, because if you haven't already started to use COM with Excel, you don't have to go develop all your own code. Now Jackie would, because that's just his nature, right? But I love to borrow that someone else has solved my problems for me, and I can just go in there, find usually a function that does what I want, and then just call it. As long as I put this thing in my library, it's really easy. So let's go ahead and let me close this guy. And I have somewhere in here. Oh no, it's up above. There we go. Excel function example. Okay. So let's start getting into this. Right here, now I have in my library a file called Excel. Let's take a step back in this, because it is a cool feature, and I know we explained it in one of our webinars, Jackie, but the whole thing, how you can have a group of functions all together, and as long as you start them with the same thing, right? And let me hit Alt F1. Oh, come on. Sometimes the studio, for me, it doesn't jump to function. Huh, interesting. It's not jumping to. I haven't run on that before. I'm going to have to show this to Maestrieth.
What did you wanted to jump to where?
To that function.
But you were on the function, right?
Oh, thank you. Because it's not. I don't usually have it defined in my file, so you're right. What I was trying to get to was in my Excel library. So I start off my library with just the two letters. Everything after, if you see, it starts with an underscore and then a word, right? I can put all of these in the same file, and then I don't have to have different includes, right? I can have one include pointing to this file, which has, I don't know how many, but quite a few different Excel functions. And this way I can keep them all organized together and reference them, right? So that's a wonderful thing in AutoHotkey. I assume other languages do something like that as well. But yeah, so that's why everything begins with Excel underscore in my library, is because that's the name of the file is Excel, and that's how you leverage it that way. All right.
Yeah, I think it's a very old part of AutoHotkey from before classes and stuff, where this would be a standard library thing. So you could put it in your AutoHotkeys lib folder and make sure that it wasn't really interfering with user-made functions. So yeah.
Yeah. All right. So first off, we need to, if you're going to actually do anything in Excel, and I don't have Excel running, let me launch Excel. We could, of course, use COM to launch Excel too, but we're not going to start that way. And let's see here. I have A1. I'm just looking where I am. So A1 text, 6. Let's just do A1 text. All right, so I'll be very original, and I'm going to write hello world here. So what this is going to do is it's going to first, in my function, if you went and looked, a 1 connects to the, I have it as a little hint right here, right? A 1 connects to the application, a 2 connects to the workbook, and I think I have a 3. I thought I had a 3. Maybe I got rid of it. But some of the functions require you to know, are you pointing to the application versus the workbook? Like application, I think specifically open and save need to be pointing to the application versus a lot of the other stuff you need to point to a workbook. But if it'll often still work if you're pointing to the application. It figures it out. So here I'm getting a pointer to, I'm saying get a pointer to the application, store it, and the letters XL in the variable. And then I'm going to use this is just dot notation, right? So I'm going to say, give me a message box with what's stored in XL in the range, cell A1. And here we have text. It's text or value, right, Jackie? Is that?
Yeah, yeah.
Value, if it was a number, that would give you all the digits, the decimals to the right. And Jackie, actually, in that webinar, I remember now, I didn't know text existed, and I was always rounding it or using the integer or something, and you showed me text. I'm like, oh man, that's so much easier. I don't have to worry about dropping out those decimals.
Yeah, it can be useful.
So I just ran the script, and of course, hey, hello world pops up, right? Because lo and behold, that's what's in cell A1. You know, let me move this guy here and put this here. Not that we'll be changing a lot, but it will be handy to have that visible all the time. And let's do it just so you guys understand. If I say this is 2, if I get it with the text, let's just duplicate it and do value next. So we're going to run it twice. The first time it gets the text, which is 2, but notice if I use value, it brings back all those decimal places after, which 9 out of 10 times I almost never want. So it was a nice, easy way to get rid of that. What if there are multiple worksheets? That's where you would put in, and I have it where you can say, you can put in the path to the worksheet. I have examples in my function library, which we can cover. Dale, remind me a little bit later on to come back to that, and we can jump into it. Or we can do it now. I don't know. What do you guys think? Do we care? Let's come back to it.
Yeah, I'd say the worksheet, that's something different. Because if you have multiple worksheets, of course, that's normal Excel behavior. Whereas what you were showing up until now was how to get a pointer from a Windows ID, and because you didn't specify a Windows ID, you just got the active Excel sheet. So, of course, that would also be the active worksheet.
Yeah, but you can specify, so get value on specific, in here, get cell value from specific worksheet, right? I wrote a function so I can pass it the pointer and give it the name of the worksheet, and then it will go to that specific thing that I want on a given worksheet, right? So it's a very good question, because it does come up where that isn't necessarily what's active, and there's several things that are like that, and it just takes a little bit of practice, but once you get used to it, you can also, remind me, Jackie, I think you can use a number or the name. Is that right? And I think they're 0 indexed, if I remember right. So you could use the actual number of where it is in the tabs. Of course, that changes, though. And so I love using the name of the worksheet instead of a number.
Yeah.
All right.
So, and we got another. What if you run a text over a value cell? But that's the beauty of it. If you run a text over a value cell, you'd get the string version of the value. So if, let's say you have, I don't know, some kind of formula.
But that's what
that's what we did. But that was still the question, right? I was trying to maybe explain it a bit more.
Yeah. Well, I was gonna, sorry, and I'm sorry I cut you off, Jackie. I know where you're. Why don't you finish? I'll build a cell here, and then you go with what you were going with, because I know what you're saying.
Yeah, I was just trying to explain that there are the different types of things in Excel, where something would be what you see, and something would be what's actually on there. And when you use value, you actually get the value that that cell has to Excel. So if Excel thinks that the cell is a number and you ask for value, then you get a number value back. Thereby you get the zeros after the comma. But if you use text, you simply just get what you see. You get a 1 as a string. And in AutoHotkey, that doesn't matter that much, But in a lot of other languages, it really does matter.
Yeah,
But
I think of it as if I were to copy this and paste special and paste just the values, and it's kind of ironic because it's the opposite, but that's what you would get from the text, right? Is like it's the values. Although it's weird because that's not value, right? It's the text. But yeah, Jackie, you're saying it right. I mean, this one is a formula in it, right? So in A3 we have a formula, and let me change this to a 3 so we see a decimal. And if I rerun this, so in A3 we get 1.5 as a text value, or the decimal place equivalent, right?
Yeah.
For the value. Does that make sense?
Hopefully.
Which is again why, depending, and I've used both. I do switch back and forth. If I'm going to use what's there in a mathematical formula, and I probably might want the decimal places. If especially often I'm using it for an address of something or something I want to use, I don't want the decimal places.
Yeah.
Cool. Okay. So let me go ahead. I'm going to comment both of these out. And let me. You know what? This is going to drive me nuts. Let me add in my hotkeys so I can start it and restart it each time without keep going forward. So I'm going to launch it now, and now I can hit my hotkey and it's going to launch for me. So now let's say we wanted to use the substring is great. It's a great function in Excel in AutoHotkey for grabbing specific areas, range. Is that a better description, Jackie, of the text, of a string?
Yeah, it grabs a
substring. Yeah.
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 I was also struggling with defining a new name for it, but yeah, but only parts of a string, right, from a given number, and you even have it on there, and for a given amount of characters.
Yeah. So this one, it's gonna start at the 6th character, and bring back everything after that because I didn't give it. If I add a comma here. Let me hit Control R. Maybe. Oh, there it goes. So there's the starting position and then the length. So that would tell you how many characters to bring back. If I just wanted 2, I could put a 2, right? But I'm going to bring back everything. And so when I run this, it pulls in. Didn't work, right? That's because here's obviously 4, 5. The 6 is at the D, right? Didn't work, and pulls everything to the right. Again, if I actually come in here and add a comma, let's see what's
5.
5 and run it, it gets 6, I guess, because the
yeah.
But I think you guys are understanding. We can grab exactly what we want, and correct me if I'm wrong. If you make this negative, is it start at the right? Is that right?
Yeah, it counts backwards. Yeah. So it would, as
that's not working the way I was thinking it was going to work.
No, that's because it's the other one that needs to be negative, and not the amount of characters to get.
There we go. Thank you. Yeah, so you can choose the start or the right or the left.
Yeah.
Again, a very, very helpful AutoHotkey function. Excel has a similar function, right?
Yeah,
so
sure.
I wouldn't necessarily use this in AutoHotkey, but we're just demonstrating how you can actually use AutoHotkey functions in and on values in Excel, and then you could dump them back into the cell. Like let's do that. Let's say we wanted to get this, and we would say I think it's Excel dot range A2 dot value :equals. Now we're going to set that value. Oh, well, anyway, that we show here, right? We set it into cell A2, right? So we set that value.
Yeah.
And of course, this one dies because it's not in any mathematical formula anymore. So there's that. All right, let's do the in string. And this one in string is you're searching to see if it has a given text in it. So in this one, because we're looking for the word and in cell A1, which doesn't exist, when I run this, it's going to come back with a 0, which means it wasn't found.
Yeah.
But, and of course I could, let's just change it this way. I'm going to change this to be work, save it, reload it, run it. And now, so it's a little confusing because I would have thought initially before I looked at this, it's a 0 or a 1, right? It did find it, didn't find it. Well, what it does is it says, not only did we find it, but we found it starting at the 13th character. So if we were to take this, put it down here, and go to the W, see right here, column 13, right? That's why it returned 13 earlier. So it just means you're going to have to use a little more logic when you actually want to say whether it was found or not. Is you would basically say if it's a 0, it's not found. Anything else, or if it's greater than 0, it was found, if you want to use it that way.
Yeah, I'd bet that, and I haven't actually tested it, or haven't tested it in a long time, but for most programs, everything positive would be true. So if you made it into an if and said if in a string, just as long as it's a positive number, it would return as being true. So it doesn't really matter that it's returning 13, as long as it's returning a positive number. I'm not even sure if it actually returned a string. AutoHotkey might be quirky enough to also say that was true.
Yeah. So if I understand what you're saying, Jackie, we're going to use this as an if statement, and most of us probably know if comes back as a true, it's going to do the line after it. I don't need my parens, which is another little fun thing in AutoHotkey. If it doesn't come true, we shouldn't see a message box because I put a return here to stop it. Yeah. So because it's going to look for the word work in that cell. It found it. Great.
Yeah.
Right. And to Jackie's point, we didn't have to say, oh, if it's a 1, do this. It was any positive value, right? And that was his point of like, it's just, hey, it found it. It's a positive value. Great. You can act on it and without having to first say, well, let's convert everything greater than a 1 down to a 1 and then use it for the if 0, 1 logic, right? So that's a good little tip, Jackie. And if we actually say, let's prove this doesn't work. I'm going to save this, reload it, and run it, and it didn't find it, so it doesn't show up.
Yeah.
But I think that works, right? If I say if don't find it, then do the message box. So the exclamation sign kind of flips the argument for you and says, if this is not true, right, then do it. Let me comment that out. I'm going to delete this because we just don't need it. All right. Now, StrSplit is, again, it's one of my favorite. Dimitri, no doubt. And if you haven't, Dimitri, if you haven't seen them, you probably have. I've seen some of your code. But what the hell? The ternaries that's the other one. Holy moly, right? They're a lot of fun.
You even have one in this script. So.
Do I?
Yeah, on line 23.
Oh, yeah. I think actually I studied real hard when I was writing that. I borrowed this from, was it Jethro? Yeah, and I pieced it together from something with Jethro and the ACC library. And then I was just condensing it, and yeah, it's ternaries allow you to do logic in one line, and very complex logic, I might add. They just get to be confusing to read. What I do, I know we're getting a little off topic here, but just I have a hot string to remind me. And basically this allows me to say, if this is this, then do this. If that's not true and this is true, then do that. If that's not true and this is true, do that. And if not, then do this. And then you can flatten this all into one line. But I start it this way because I see Maestrieth write this stuff in one line at one time, and I just get really confused. So I don't try that. I flatten it after I do it. Did we do a webinar on ternaries, Jackie, or did we just do a talking point on it?
I can't remember. I don't recall we did an entire webinar on it. But yeah, we have at least touched on it a few times before.
Yeah, I don't see it. Okay.
Yeah.
But I remember I know we discussed them. So anyway, so again, off topic, but okay. StrSplit. StrSplit's a really fun one. We're going to look at cell A1 and we're going to split it on spaces. And I'm going to get the first, where the first space is cell A1. Yeah, so this will still work. I'm going to run it. And we just pulled back the word this, right? If I change this to a 2, save, reload, run, we get didn't, right? So I'm parsing the cells in there off of spaces. And because it's an object, it's dumping it into this object for me. I don't even have to save this value. That's what I absolutely love about it, is I can just put this number here, use it, and never even store it as a variable if I don't want to.
Yeah.
But that's using StrSplit, again, in Excel, which can be very handy, right? If you're trying to parse out or look for something and grab something in there, it's pretty awesome. And the next one, now regular expressions, did we do 2 webinars on it or just 1? Maybe just 1.
I think we had one where we touched so much on regular expressions that we decided to do an entire webinar on it.
Okay.
So yeah.
Now this is, I didn't look, I should have updated and done a search. I'd say about 4 or 5 years ago, Excel did not by default have regular expressions in their functions. Why, I have no idea. They did have an add-in. You could download it and install it. I say it's like a module, if I remember right, I think, or something, a COM add-in maybe? I don't recall. I remember you could use them, but you had to download and install it. The problem, of course, is if you write a regular expression in your code, in your macro, and you try to use, or even your function, right? And you're like, this is great. And then you give your spreadsheet to someone else and they haven't downloaded and installed it, it would break. And so I thought, like, I'm not doing that because I can't rely on everybody to have this thing installed, right? It's especially in corporate America, they're not going to do it. So I loved using AutoHotkeys, regular expressions. I even did it in SPSS, the programming language I use. It didn't have regular expressions, and yet I could parse the data, grab exactly what I wanted, and use regular expressions in it without having it in the tool that I was using it on. So it was really cool.
Yeah.
In this one, it looks like, and we're not going to get into the specifics of regular expressions, but a general, we're saying, hey, look at everything, don't be greedy, find the first number and grab it plus as many numbers that you see until it's not a number. So if I'm going to put this and say 112, right? Theoretically.
Yeah, that'll work.
And this is what the variable I want to store it in. The way regular expressions work is if it finds something, it's going to put it in this num1 because num1 is because this is the first grouping. Again, we have a webinar on this, and I have, I think, at least 10 videos on regular expressions.
Yeah, so we'll see a message box with 112 in it.
Yeah, I did something right.
Yeah.
But again, regular expressions, they're amazing. Especially you can use named ones. So I could have given this thing a name, so I don't have to use this num1 and num2 and num3. I can give them particular names, and you can parse things out of your data. It's really, really, really fun and easy to use.
It is.
Cool. Does anyone have any questions? So at least first on what we covered, especially around the Excel side of things. And if not, I mean, you can either raise your hand, ask the question, or put it in the chat. If not, then, well, if Dimitri is interested, or if you have another Excel question that's like kind of specific but not too long, that you think the explanation is not going to be that long, let's go ahead and field it now. If not, then we'll let Dimitri, if he's up for it, share his stuff and talk through what he was doing and how he uses his dynamic functions. I see AJ asking about passing VBA code through COM. I'm gonna change your question a little because I don't know, Jackie. Is it possible? Not that we would, but is it possible to pass VBA code? Because theoretically, you might be able to use VBA with AutoHotkey, but a better way to think about it is COM is very, very similar when you look at the syntax to VBA, especially the COM that we use now, where COM is integrated into the AutoHotkey_L version. It used to be you look at the syntax, it used to be terrible. Now what I do is I'll say, hey, I think I put a button here. Yeah, I'll record a macro and say, okay, I'm going to record a macro. I want to make this bold and do something else, and then I'm going to stop. What do I hit it up here? I don't remember where I turned it out. Yeah, stop recording, and then was it Alt F11? Yeah, and come into your macros, and then so I can look at this this is going to be super close. Let me copy this, come into, back to AutoHotkey. Let me come back up here right after this, type Excel, because I need to connect to the one thing you got to remember that's going to be slightly different from what you borrow from, I just had a return here. What you borrow from the Excel macro recorder is make sure you put that pointer in there, because Excel is already in Excel, so it knows, you don't have to connect to itself, right? In this example, you have to tell it, hey, go out and connect to Excel, find the selection. Now, it didn't use a range, it used the selected code, which is fine. Set the font to bold. Now, here's the big, holy cow, look at this. I don't know if I can do this. Oh, now we have AutoHotkey code.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, like, it was that close. So I don't try to write VBA code. Here's my order of things when I'm doing stuff in Excel. I'll try to, first I use my function library, and then if I can't find what I want, I'll search the forum and see if anyone else has done what I've done. If I haven't, then I'll search, let's say, Stack Overflow or a couple places. Okay, I still can't find the COM version of it. If I can't find that, then I start searching like Stack Overflow for VBA code that does what I want. Actually, let me back up, because I do actually do what I just did. If I can try to recreate it with the macro recorder, I'll convert it. The other big one is you have to convert variables. It's hard to explain without doing it, but they have constants in there that are words and they're italics, and you have to, I think, right click on them and say, what is it, something value? Jackie, do you remember?
Yeah, that's a good way of doing it.
You
had the macro one open, didn't you?
Yeah.
If you just mouse over true.
Thank you. List constant. No, quick info. That'll show it.
Yeah, that's one way, but I think you can just keep your mouse over it.
Oh.
Maybe you need to click in it. I believed it actually turned up, but it didn't. Fair enough.
Well, even this one didn't, for whatever reason. It's not reacting.
No.
Yeah, and it should, and it normally does.
But is it actually active? Because for some reason it's not coloring in the code or anything. It's
colored. You just can't see it. It's blue. It's hard to tell, but it's blue.
Fair enough.
Yeah, but that's the other one is let's see, the object browser. You can also kind of get to the things. All right.
Yeah, that's not the best way.
Usually this quick info will show you that number.
Yeah, but where is the quick info window? It should just pop it up somewhere.
I thought it popped up, and maybe that's the whole problem. Is online? It's somewhere else. So anyway, so AJ, that's what we do. Yeah, I see your response there. Yeah, and I convert VBA to a COM version of AutoHotkey, for probably a better way to say it, but and then that way I can run everything in AutoHotkey. I can run it on, and it honestly, like, I haven't noticed, I've been using Excel with AutoHotkey, I'd say, for 8 years, and I've yet to have like Excel change in a way that one of my functions no longer worked, right? The things are very constant. They don't change things up a lot. So once you have something working, it works for quite a while.
Yeah.
And the other one is, of course, is when you start writing macros and you share them, you have to share them, and then there's the whole virus thing, and people have to accept, and the VBA, or there could be a virus, and I just like having my AutoHotkey code where I don't have to worry about that.
Yeah, I'd say we had a good amount of people being frustrated by macros not working because they didn't click the small activate or allow. Yeah, using one of those, I thought about that as well.
Yeah, I was trying to think, do you recall any of them?
Yeah, that one you had right there is one of them. And see, it even fixed it. But isn't the window somewhere on your system? To me, it's weird that nothing is showing. And even just you being there should give you a small tooltip with the info. So
yeah, there's something weird going on at this moment. Normally it's very easy.
yeah.
All right, so Dimitri, were you up for sharing your stuff?
Yeah, of course.
Great, awesome. Let me stop sharing.
Okay. And now share my screen. Are you? Yeah, I'm not sure which screen are you currently watching.
We see Excel.
Ah, okay. I made some flexible codes to actually, what I noticed that I work more and more with Excel because I have the data available there. And most of the time I have a list of variables, of values that I need to let run functions to. So for example, I made some custom functions, like here a simple message box function and a simple add function that just adds the values and returns a value. And if I go, for example, in Excel and I say here the message box, I select it, I press my hotkey that activates the script, then it will run the first value. It will check if it's a function, and then it will uses the other columns to use that values as variables. So you have the title is A and the text is 1. It says 2, 3, and the same here with adding. That even returns the return value in Excel. I find it quite interesting. The only problem I had is, as you can see, the first add function should have returned an error, and it didn't.
Well, shouldn't it return 3?
And I think if I put it 0 here, it would return it, yes. But if you have no value, it shouldn't, yeah, the function should fail normally.
Okay, I would still think 3 plus nothing is still 3. But anyway, it's irrelevant. It's fine. It's whatever you want, right? But to me, in my head, 3 plus nothing is still 3. Anyway, yeah, it obviously should have done something.
Yeah.
How did you get the values from the cells? I didn't see that.
Okay, that's it's actually code. I even made it more simpler just for demonstration, because I start, here, this is my function. I first make an empty array. Then I have another function that copies the selection of Excel to my array. And that's this here. If first, here uses my clipboard function, another one. Then he checks, oh, I've got Excel, so I should use the Excel clipboard function. So that becomes complicated. And then he just uses actually this code to collect the data.
So it's using text.
Right. That's the first thing I
Yes.
just noticed. Yeah. Yeah. And for the math stuff, right, you might want value there instead of text. At least to start.
Yeah, okay, but I don't think it matters. It seems to be working fine, I think. But yeah, it could be an issue.
It's just if empty cells was something that you experienced, that you still wanted it to actually make the correct calculation, that might be interesting to keep in mind, right?
Yeah. But
And I'm
here I think, yeah, here's a code where I count the variables I have available. And if he sees that it's empty, he will say, yeah, okay, I won't add it to my separate array. And in this array, I will store all the parameters I want to pass to the function.
Okay, so
So
it will actually see it as
nothing.
nothing, really?
It won't count it.
Because it won't even do the calculation.
It won't see it as a value, because here is my actually the function that is run. It takes the function AHK, and that's just the first value of the row, and it takes the other values of the row. It will pass as array parameter.
Yeah, and that's the thing with your add function. You tell it that it needs to have 2 parameters.
Yeah,
But
and it
here
only has one.
Yeah, and that's probably why it fails to actually deliver anything. Just
Yeah, that's
blank.
true, but I find it quite strange that it doesn't displays an error for me.
Yeah.
well, because it's breaking and stopping, right? I mean, that's where it's you know, and that we have a whole webinar talking about the error not error. What's it called, Jackie? On error. So it is.
On error. Yeah.
Right? That you could build in rules that would say, hey, if there's an error, you know, show me something, right? And maybe that's something you could consider adding. Can you go back to your spreadsheet?
Yeah.
Yeah, and then just highlight the 23 and 8, or any of it. Yeah. So
Yeah.
you know, and I know you're just doing this as an example, but seeing the bottom, just the 23 and the 8, right? Or
Yeah.
just select those 2 cells. You know, like the seeing the over there, yeah.
Yeah.
So it has your count, your sum, you know, how many cells are selected, an average, just an FYI, right? If other people, not you, don't know, it's one of the things like I happen to notice, like, wow, that's cool, right? I don't have to go add these. I can just highlight them, and whatever you have highlighted, it'll automatically do that for you.
Yeah, okay, the function I displayed here are, of course, a little bit very simple. It's just for demonstration.
Yeah.
At my work, I use it, for example, to add files to assembly, things like that. And it's a lot of the time I have a lot of functions, and they can do amazing stuff. And it's not always clear what I will need in the future. And this is a way to very easy make a quick loop over functions, and it's quite flexible, and you can easily change parameters and things. I found it an interesting idea, and it's
But
and Excel is quite handy to also display the values that you get back.
yeah, I mean, you could do it also if there's list views and in AutoHotkey that can really help with that kind of stuff, right? That are native to it. They're very easy to manipulate.
Yeah, that's true, but then you have to take the effort to make a nice graphic user interface to display it, and here you have already everything in Excel. So, and
If you're
this
already
is,
in Excel, yeah.
yeah, and this is a quite flexible code because you can run any function you want in
Well,
it. You can
but
easily change the functions.
yeah,
So the first you run that function, and afterwards another one, and
right. But
things like
see,
that.
this is where for me, I'm like, how do I know do you have something helping type like message box or add? How do you know what's available? How do you know what to put in there?
My brain.
Okay, and that's where for me, I'm like, holy hell, I got to remember to get. And if I have a typo, I'm not knocking it, right? It's just for me, I would rather have a GUI that would show me to pick and choose from, right? But yeah,
That's also a possibility. But I actually used it a lot already in Excel, but then it was always specific for one function. And then suddenly I realized, why would I do it like this? So I can make it more flexible, and then I can do any function I want.
yeah. And here's the thing, I'm gonna tell you straight up, right? If it works for you, that's all that matters, right?
Yeah.
I'm not in any way gonna say like, oh, this is wrong, because it's not. If you like it and it works for you, that's what I love about AutoHotkey, right? If it works with the way things make sense to you, then by all means, that's the way you should be doing it, right? It's that's the beautiful part about it, is what makes sense to you, not what makes sense to me or some other random person. Absolutely.
That's true. The only thing, yeah, I already mentioned that I find it strange that the dynamic function actually doesn't give you correct error messages. I think it's a property of the dynamic functions.
Well, again, that's what you can put in after something happens to look for an error code, and if it changes, then you can write code to react to it and to do something.
Yeah, that's
Right.
true.
Which is and I, even though we even did a webinar on it, thankfully Joe was at Winograd, I think. He talked a lot. He uses them a lot, and he gave some really good. I think it was him. Gave some really good examples. Maybe it was someone else of how they use them, and it was like, wow, I can see how that really helps. I just typically don't share the stuff I do with a lot of other people, so I just fix it, work on it, fix it myself. So I don't really care. Yeah, I have, and I think I did a couple videos on it, but I took, my entire reports and deal with the formatting, opening them, the formatting them, and you can even open automate opening a text file or tab element file, whatever you want, highlight it, change the formatting, the colors, bold, start automating reporting where it looks at the raw data and creates new worksheets and calculates ranges and how much. I did the email metrics for, like average number of opens and clicks by region. I used a regular expression to parse out each of the things by region and by language and by business line. And it saved, my colleague would spend 40 hours a month, and I got it down to where I could hit a button, and in 2 minutes, it did more than he ever did. And it was just crazy.
Yeah, I'd say I didn't see all of your code and I didn't see it well enough, but there was a good amount of back and forth and I don't know, copying to the clipboard and then phrasing the clipboard, and to me
Yeah.
it's like, couldn't you use a safe array and just use the values as you have them from the selection instead of copying them out?
Yeah, I could do it like this, but actually these functions I use are a lot stronger and have more possibilities. For example, I could tell my code to not return an array like with the coordinates, but like say, yeah, the first row is header, and if I want the value, wait, I'll show you. For example, if I would for a for example, I could use the same function to give me, for example, the var a of tests, and then it would display 2. And that's actually the reason why I make it that complex, to have more flexibility to my code. And indeed, the code I displayed here is maybe over complex for a lot of people, and we could write it more simpler, but then I couldn't use a lot of other functionalities. And most of the time, I do not have a lot of time to clean up my code.
No, yeah, I do get a good amount of that, but it was just the idea of you copying it out and making your own array when Excel already puts it in an array for you. That was just the thing I was getting at. When you say object shoot range, if you just return that into a variable, that would be a safe array. And from there you could say, I want row 3, cell 4, or whatever. It's already put into a usable object for you. You don't need to parse stuff in the clipboard.
Yeah, that's true. But then you couldn't use the functionality that you would say, I want to use the first row as an indicator of what the name of that column is.
As a
Yeah,
reference, is that what you're saying? To use it as a like a header row to say that?
Yes.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
But indeed, in this example, I could make it a lot of simpler. I could even use just the clipboard function to copy the values out of the table. That's also a possibility.
And on line 62, not that we get into your code, but I see you using offset, and offset is another really wonderful thing in Excel, is that you can basically say, you know, go here 2 to the right or 1 to the right or 5 up and whatever, or 5 up and over. And it keeps track of where you are. And once you get used to using offsets, holy cow, it's so much easier than trying to calculate your new place where you want something, or to get it or to set it.
Yeah, that's true. Actually, I do not really like the indication of the cells in Excel, A1 and B1.
Mm-hmm.
If you want to loop over it automatically, it's sometimes a hassle to find the correct coordinate. And you have in Excel also possibility to say I want to have the row 1, column 1.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You can change the address for it.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And you can, I think I had an example of mine where I used that kind of notation to access stuff instead of the ABC version, which I'm used to, so I like it, but I understand, I know when I was trying to navigate around and I got to convert it from letters to numbers to do the stuff, it was a pain in the butt. Especially when you get to AC or AD or something, or ZZ, it was really ridiculous.
Okay. Actually, I've rewritten my code a little bit, so it at least checks if the parameters are correct. So try to check if it runs now correctly. No. Okay. Yeah. But it doesn't really matter because I find it already very powerful and it works for me. The only disadvantages is actually it doesn't seize the errors, but we can live with that.
Well, I'm sure you could figure out with a little bit of work, you could figure out how to stop processing, you know, or fix at least that one error. Basically say if there's not 2, add a 0. Well, I don't know if you'd want to do that. Maybe you just want to stop. If there's not 2, stop what you're doing and say there's an error.
Yeah, here I say just continue and display gives us the return value error message. So
Cool.
that's one way.
Did anyone have any questions on any of this, or on something? Does it get you thinking about something you do in Excel and you'd like a little help stepping into using AutoHotkey with Excel? Because once you start doing it, man, if you use Excel at all, it can really help how you do stuff in Excel. Okay.
Yeah, fair enough.
Did anyone have? Oh, I'd love to. Sorry. What do you want to? Do you have something to share, Brad? To work on? What? You have a question? But I have no time to do it. Oh, you'd love to learn? Is that what you're saying? Ah, okay. Yeah, that's one of the tough things, right? Everyone, but you know, I mean, I started off with doing the bare basics, and then I slowly, when I told you about that automation of the reporting for emails, I didn't automate the whole thing at once, right? I automated parsing out my email data first, and then I started automating like a high level overall thing, and then every time I go through, I would add a little more complexity. So yeah, just don't try to do it all at once. It's pretty overwhelming. The one thing I would say, Brad, because I know you're playing with web scraping, and what I've told everyone is, if I could go back in time, I learned web scraping before I learned using dot notation and COM with Excel, and I totally wish I had flipped that, because every web page is different in how you access it and how it's built and how it's structured and what to do. And just understanding dot notation alone, getting familiar with using COM in Excel, it's really so much cleaner and simpler. It's just a lot easier to pick up. And then the web scraping is, I think, a little easier. Cool. Well, does anyone have anything they've been working, other than like even with Excel, something else that they want to share that they've been working on?
I have some other
Oh, all
interesting
right.
script, maybe.
You bet. Let's see it.
The script is actually, I had the following, you have a screen clipping script, Joe.
Yep.
And I used it actually to help somebody out. And it's actually a script to just let somebody screen clip, and it will store that image into a file.
Mm-hmm.
In the background, it will use Tesseract to perform OCR to see if there is text. Then if it found text, it would store it into a text file with the same name as the image.
Cool. Yeah.
Okay. Then if the person said, please give me a report, then it would loop over every image, see if the text file was already made. Else it would make the text file, because it could take a little bit of time. And if it's, I tried to estimate if it was an image or a text. So if you divide the amount of characters between the amount of enters, and if I indicated if it was more than 50, I would say it's probably a text, and else it could be an image with some text in it. And then it would generate in Word a file with all the images and the text in text. So that was quite a cool thing.
Yeah.
Then I began thinking, yeah, I wanted to auto crop the images. And it's
Auto crop them to around the text, or
no, just if you have an image like, yeah, now this is quite difficult to see. I'll open it in Paint. If you if you take a screenshot of an image, you have a lot of area what isn't really the image. Do you understand? Here, there is some white space.
Yeah, I understand. I don't think mine usually does.
No, but if you want to copy the whole image,
Okay, I understand what you're
also
saying.
the border.
Okay, I get you.
And my idea was to also crop that.
Yeah.
And actually, I already managed to make something. I think I already broke it. I'll remove this code, make it inactive. And let's see what it's. Okay, here is the result. And it works actually. This was the start image. You see the white border here?
Mm-hmm.
And then I've put some pixels in the corners to see if the crop was done correctly. And as you can see, this corner went well. And here he took 1 pixel too much.
Mm.
And it's kind of interesting what I noticed. If you are working in Paint and you erase things like this, you would think that this whole area is one color. But it isn't not true. Sometimes Paint puts some extra pixel, 1 pixel with a different color in it. It's almost white, but it's not white. And because my script was looping over all the pixels and seeing if it was the same color, yeah, it stopped at 1 pixel and I couldn't figure it out.
Yeah,
just when I went to check the color, it was one number off.
But you said Paint was doing that, right?
Yeah, and I found it quite strange because I would think that it would be all white.
Yeah. Is it that you were doing the screen clipping from Paint then? Because that's where I'm confused.
No, what I actually would do, and I'll open, no, also, I've used GDIP to load the image into AutoHotkey and then to loop over all the pixels.
But then how did that new pixel from Paint end up in there? That's where I'm confused.
Because to test, I just made a simple example that is just like this.
Okay, so it gets back to you weren't in your example. You weren't using a screen clipping.
No,
okay.
I just wanted to test my script if it would work. I found it an interesting idea to auto-crop images.
Yeah.
And then I noticed that I let my script run all the way here,
yeah,
and then over there, and it would stop.
Yeah.
At the first time it found a pixel that was at a different color than the pixel in the first position.
Yeah.
And then I noticed that it would stop here somewhere, and I couldn't figure it out. And apparently, if you delete things like this, in Paint, it will even sometimes put a not white pixel in it.
It's interesting, yeah.
And actually, to speed up the script, I would first say, yeah, just go 10 coordinates further until you found a different pixel, and then go back and try to search that area of 10 pixels, 10 by 10 for the first corner. And then you could loop over it to the left and to the bottom. And like that you could find the coordinates of the image. But now I try to make it also possible to process images like this, and that makes it, of course, a lot more difficult, because my script would say, yeah, I found this one, and I go to the right and to the bottom, and then it would clip this. But that's wrong. So it's
funny.
kind of an interesting script, but I haven't finished it yet.
It's funny because you would think what you were doing was going to be pretty easy, and then you run into these little weird things that end up really puzzling you.
Yeah, and then I tried to make a function that would loop like this, but I haven't tested it yet. Apparently it doesn't work yet, but I think I'm on the right track.
Maestrieth was helping me with one, and I still haven't shared it, but it's called Grabby, but he borrowed it from the find text function. He borrowed the concepts, and I know he saw the similar stuff in it, but he said in the find text function that's on the forum,
yeah,
I thought he had something that would automate kind of doing what you're doing. It'll look at all of the stuff and identify differences between colors in a big thing, and I thought he'd auto-cropped things with it. I think it's already, it's done. You might be able to borrow straight from it. You might want to take a look in there.
That's interesting. But it's also interesting to make it yourself.
Sure, yeah. Well, that's how people like you end up being much better programmers than people like me, because I just go find it and it works, and I said I don't care, right? I get it done. But it's by the digging that's how you really start understanding and learning, right? So, yeah.
The more older I get, the more I realize that combining the good stuff together is also a great way to invent some things that are quite powerful without too much effort.
Mm-hmm. I just saw a note from, I'm trying to see where it started from. It looks like David. He's trying to insert something into Google Docs. I haven't played with Google Docs and Google Sheets, but I would think they had a COM object. Does anybody know?
I'd say I've never had Google Docs or Google Sheets on my local machine, and without it being on your local machine, it does not have a COM object.
Oh, good point. Yeah.
So if you have it open in Chrome,
but I think they have an API.
Yeah, that's something quite different from.
Yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
But I do think there's an API for connecting to it, and possibly inserting stuff where it's similar, but to Jackie's point, the actual approach you're doing is different. It's not like a local thing, but I know I've used, I think it was called Smart Sheets or something, and I was able to use their API and put in data and rip data and do what I wanted to do. I'm like, okay, I can use it. It was from an API, not COM.
And it's a good bit more limited, might be a way of putting it.
Absolutely, yeah.
So, yeah, I'd say, and it's gonna be the same when everybody switch to Microsoft 365. That's also browser-based, and again, we'll lose out on the COM functionality when people do that. But yeah, hopefully they'll have some good APIs we can use.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so unless someone else happens to know, I was just searching the forum to see if anyone mentions it. But yeah, it's a really good question. I know Google Docs is getting overall more popular than it used to be, but I'm pretty sure that they have an API that you could do stuff.
Yeah, he even linked it in the chat now that there are some things. Some of the things that I know from when looking at it is that, yeah, you can do quite a lot of stuff, but a good amount of it wasn't actually meant for on-screen things.
Uh-huh.
Whereas with COM, you could follow along, do things very live, where with the other stuff, it's still more limited. But you can do some good stuff still, but not to the same extent.
Mm-hmm.
But again, I don't feel like too many applications today are really meant for that intermediary programmer like us. I don't see the same focus on people that are not big corporations and stuff. Their APIs are built, yes, but not for that less likely to happen interaction.
Well, I was going to say, just to be mean, it seems like it's much more of the Mac, people that use Macs, right? They're not, generally speaking, actually programmers, ironically, will write in a Mac, but the average person using a Mac is much more mouse clicks, doing stuff, right? And they don't customize things, and it seems like, yeah, that there's this divide that like less and less people, you're gonna be having one mouse button or maybe two doing stuff, and it's simple. But yeah, actually automating it, you're going to have to be a much more full stack programmer or something to be able to do it.
Yeah, I think it's a matter of all that back and forth with. It needs to be simple for the end user. We want people to be able to automate small parts of this over here or give them nice functionality from the cloud, but with you still having to have some kind of security because everything is on a server and you don't want anybody to break in or anything like that. It simply becomes more limited because if you have it locally on your machine, much more can be allowed, much more power can be given to the user. But as soon as stuff is happening in the cloud, we're not in a place where the user can have as much control as they used to. They can have much more easier UIs, and if they can sell the need, they can probably get the company to make it for them, but making it yourself, that's not as easy as it once was.
Yeah. Does anyone have anything else they're working on? Not necessarily Excel. Anything they've done lately that's fun or interesting? That was an interesting example, Dimitri, with the especially the determining if it has text in it, grabbing it. The one thing I was also going to say you could consider, and Jackie, is it called something data store? I was going to say you could actually store the text in the image file on the, what's it called? The data stream data. What is that called?
Yeah, alternate data stream. Yeah.
Yeah. So you would actually have them in the same file, but it's literally text, that you've ripped. And then it's just maybe possibly a little simpler if that helps you at all. That's an interesting.
Yeah.
Can you give me an example?
Do you have one of our examples from once
I
upon a
think
time?
I do. Yeah.
Just where to write it down. I'll give you the screen back.
Yeah, just
I'll say I do remember that someone on the forum has something in the scripts and functions forum part here now that's kind of at the top of that. So you could find something on the forum.
This is Jackie's example. Jackie, let me give you control. Let me get rid of these two because those will kill you. And then I'm going to pass control because I know you can look at this very quickly, right? And probably kind of talk through it. I believe this is the one that we did where we were just having an example.
Yeah. This was an old one, and one of the things with using the alternate data stream is that it's only in a specific hard disk format or file disk format, whatever you call it. So something like this wouldn't be useful if you had plans of moving your exit or whatever it was to an thumb drive, because they're not stored the same way. It's an NTF format, and probably have an FAT format on your hard disk. But yeah, depending on that, this is still one thing to do. And AutoHotkey has the needed commands to do this inherently. As you can see here, we were trying to store a small password. And again, it's not really that safe, because someone who knew what they were doing would be able to find it. But to the normal user, without any kind of coding experience, they would not in File Explorer be able to see this property of a file. So it would be hidden from plain sight, at least. Mm-hmm. So as you can see here, I have the username. I do have some control here. That's just me. And here we then had a password stored on this file. I don't remember, Joe, do you think we actually have it still on here? No, I hadn't entered one yet. So let's say I entered in a password here. And for this one, it could just be something very simple. I entered in my name. So what it does is that now this script file actually knows what I wrote, because it was appended onto the file as a kind of attribute. So if I ran this once more, it now knows it. I don't need to write it anymore. So even though I don't have any variable here telling it what my password is, the file actually knows what my password is. Because it's stored using any read and any write here. You use the file path, you tell it to use the data stream, and then you tell it what data to store. And then I just store it like I would any other, any value. That's just the method I chose, because I can then use any write and any read. You could have chosen other ways with file append and stuff like that. But here it makes it very structured data that I can easily pick and choose from. And I'm not limited to only putting one value there. I could have put multiple things and have structured it in settings and passwords and whatever and whatnot. So it's a pretty simple way of storing a bit more information that isn't in plain sight.
Yeah, and again, this image could have been a picture, right? And the picture still stays there, yet it has that hidden words. I think of it as like an attribute, even though it's not an attribute. That's how I think of it in my head, is like, oh, it's, you know, it's there. Jackie and I well, maybe, I can't remember if we were playing with it, but I played with it where I took a really big text document and I wrote it to a file that was a text file that was empty. And so you'd open the text file and it's blank, right? You'd open it with anything you want, it's blank. Yet the file was like a meg in size. And I'm like, you're like, what? How can a file be a meg in size yet it's empty? And that was how it was actually stored in this other area.
Yeah. And
can it store returns?
Yeah,
That
I believe so.
Because normally in the ini write and the ini read, you cannot do that.
Well, don't use any write and any read. That's what Jackie said earlier, right? He used them here, but you don't have to use that in particular, right? You can use file append.
Okay.
Yeah, it's just a matter of actually telling the command the path of where to write it. And here I use this part here, and then I tell it to use the sections and settings section, and then to get the value path or pass. But that's just the method that I chose to use here because it's built into that command. And I know that on the forum, Joe,
hold on, I need my mouse. I can't see the chat. I see someone's writing, so I'm just trying to find my chat window. Hold on. Where in the world? You can keep talking. Sorry. Where's my
Yeah, it's just Gene or
there?
one actually asked for
Okay.
stream and data, and that is just an extension on the path. So I'm telling Windows or the any write command in this case that it's this file, stream, and the area data. It's just it's my defined version of where to put it. So it's in the data of the alternate data stream. So that doesn't make sense.
So if you would move the file or rename the file, you couldn't retrieve the data anymore, if I understand correctly.
Yeah. If that's exactly, you could move the file to some other folder, then the data would still be there. But if you change the file in some way, then the data would be deleted or whatever you call it. And again, if you store it on other types of file formats, then again, you couldn't. It's a functionality of the hard disk partition, yeah.
All right, so if another person would copy your data, it couldn't retrieve that information. That's interesting.
Well, depending on how they copy it, right?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, if they use a USB drive, thumb drive, and copy everything over into that would be another way of storing files, and it would be removed. But if they somehow had a portable hard disk they plugged into the USB drive and copied it to, then it might have been the same file format. So it's not a safe way like that. It was just a way that we found at some point to store a bit of extra information outside of the normal viewable area on a file. So yeah. Someone just asked, Joe, if what is your vision on RPA? Is it better than AutoHotkey? In which situations?
Yeah, we've done a lot of podcasts discussing this, right? Yeah, it's RPA. If you don't know, robotics process automation. Every person I've ever met has said they hate that term because there's no damn robot. I think of it more as because RPA really is more like kind of desktop automation, right? Is a robotic desktop automation. There are different versions of it, but AutoHotkey is RPA, right? It's that specific one. We're running it on a desktop. Other tools like Automation Anywhere and Blue Prism and what's the third main one?
UiPath.
Thank you. Yeah. They're very common, ridiculously expensive, in my opinion. Jackie and I have talked. Which one are they using at your work, Jackie?
UiPath.
Okay.
Yeah.
And we're not knocking them as far as their functionality, right? I mean, I will not privately, I'll say it anyway, but it from what I've seen, and I've talked to people who've used Automation Anywhere and UiPath, they're GUI, drag and drop, and you can do a lot of stuff, but they say no programming. We actually, our podcast, I think it's maybe our next one or the one after that, Charlie Simmons or /Tank from the forum, I saw this Automation Anywhere video, an ad, and so I said, hey, let's watch this video and discuss as we go through the ad, and it was quite comical because Tank used to actually work for a company where he went out and used Automation Anywhere, set it up at big companies, installed it, and then created scripts and bots to run on them, and he got in. He knows it really well, so he was pretty honest in his opinions. He likes the fact you could use it, but he's not a huge fan overall. AutoHotkey is amazing. It's got amazing functionality. There's some stuff, and we did mention it in that video, right, Jackie? The stuff that AutoHotkey doesn't have, right? Especially around security type of things and automatically logging and tracking some of the stuff. But
yeah, the thing for me with RPA, just the term RPA, is that it's not something different. It's not something new. It's just a way to sell macro recorders. It might be a way of putting it. It is what it is. Someone records an action and the program is able to replicate it afterwards. And these companies have done the same as the developers behind AutoHotkey. They've written something that will give you lines of more or less code like actions that will happen, and it will be able to repeat it for you on a remote desktop. And that's about what RPA is. And yes, some of them have then used time on making it more secure. Some have used time on making their macro recorder able to record more logging while doing it. And that's about it. And for someone who hasn't coded or hasn't automated any task before, RPA can sound as if it's really groundbreaking.
Yeah.
But in essence, it's just the same as writing a lengthy script, because that's what it is. And yes, one is written in one language and the other one is written in another language, but it's still the same thing. It's a piece of step-by-step instructions for the computer to do.
Here are a few books I have on RPA type stuff. I read a fair amount about it. This one, no, not the next one. The Robots and the Future of Work was really, really interesting. I thought they did a great job. The next one was pretty interesting as well. And several of these other ones. I know, Jackie, if I remember right, we've talked about the Singularity a couple of times.
Yeah.
And I can't remember if you mentioned the glass cage at one point or not. Someone I talked to did. But it's a wonderful world where we're going and stuff. But to Jackie's point, it's the same damn stuff we've been doing for so long. It's just another, and I'm not going to say a cool name because I hate the name, but the name is taking off. And in one of the podcasts we did, we showed the search terms in what was it, about 4 or 5 years ago, Jackie? RPA suddenly really took off, right?
Yeah, it did.
Yeah.
And the thing is that with RPA, if your UI path or if your automation anywhere or whatever, you're actually making a large amount of money and you're very interested in making your tool even more powerful, even easier to use, even more reliable. And by that alone, they will overtake AutoHotkey within a short amount of time, because it takes a good amount of time on learning AutoHotkey, and we don't have the most professional resources out there to learning AutoHotkey. We do have some, and you can do it on your own terms and all that, and it's free and it's open source, so there's nothing hidden there. Whereas the others cost you an arm and a leg to get going with, but at some point they will probably overtake small scripting languages like AutoHotkey, for sure.
Yeah. And just to give you some idea of when Jackie mentions the cost behind them, and that's of course why when you're making this much money, you can afford to develop some very robust stuff about training and educating people. Tank was mentioning, for having someone come out on site. Jackie, do you remember how many weeks he said that he was typically there?
He said something, I think it was 8 weeks. 8
okay,
to 12
I
weeks.
was thinking 6. Okay, 6. Let's say 6 to 8 weeks.
Yeah.
They're paying $2,000 a day, right, to have someone there during that time while they're developing the bots. That's not counting into the licensing. This is just to create a bot, right? Or maybe it's a couple bots. Let's give them a benefit of the doubt. They create a couple bots. So you're out there for 2 months at $2,000 a day. And then, if they have a licensing, for one bot, they have, I know there's the dev bot and then the actual real world, but was there a third, or am I imagining that?
Oh, I don't remember. I just know that at our company, we buy the bots at 20-hour intervals. So as long as a single CPU on a remote desktop can switch to another task up until it's busy for 24 hours, that's one licensing fee. So.
Yeah, and I sorry, I was typing. Did you mention the dollar figure, Jackie?
No, I did not.
So yeah, the little thing, that's one of the things we were laughing at in that the ad that we were rebuking, was the little thing they don't tell you is like, yeah, each license is $10,000 per bot, right? And that's where you need the dev bot and the real world bot. I swear there's a third one and it just doesn't come on top of my mind. But you know, that's per year. And to Jackie's point, they're single threaded. They can only do one thing at a time. But in the video, they're like, oh, it's so scalable. You can scale it instantly and have more, as many as you want, at $10,000 a pop, right? They didn't mention that. But yeah, it's pretty wild. David had a question, and I think he started explaining, but he said he'll share his screen. So David, you want to share your screen and explain what you were doing with the? I think you wanted to pass data to a function instead of, but not assign it to a variable first. Can you unmute yourself and share your screen? Yep, he's getting there. Oh, thanks for oh, Jackie, that was you. Thank you. Yeah.
Yeah. It's just, it's on the forum, and right now people are talking about the alternate data stream.
Yeah, it was, I remember I saw the post, and like within a week, you and I, this is before we were doing any sort of webinars, if I remember right. And I'm like, we were just having random chats at that point. And I said, like, did you happen to see this thing? And you're like, yeah, it was really interesting.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry. My bad, David. It's on the other screen. My third monitor is way over my head, so I can't easily see it. But you should be able to share now. Just try to share again. It says it's waiting for you to share it. Oh, waiting for David. Control. Wait, why is it? Hold on. Oh, you know what? I'm sorry. It said, all right, now you should be able to do it. And unmute. I can unmute you. There you go. Oh, the volume is really low. You might have to, on Zoom, look at the bottom left where there's a little mic and there's a drop down next to it, and you might just have to choose a different mic. That's the one thing Zoom, it doesn't always default to your best mic. We still can't hear you. I see you talking.
Is this any better?
Ooh, that's terrible. It sounded like you were inside your machine and behind you there.
Is this any
Oh, that's better. I think we can make that.
Okay,
Yeah.
all right. Okay, so can you see my screen?
Is he sharing the screen yet? I don't see it.
No, I don't either.
Okay, yeah, try to share your screen again. I didn't stop sharing when I was going on earlier, so you should be able to this time. There we go, it's starting. All right.
Great.
Yeah.
And, okay, so I got my function set up here. And then it just takes two variables, and then all it does is send them back out. And then end. No, I think it's not. Okay, and then I call it by just saying, clinical and then function, and I assign these two variables, and after I assign them, then I pass them to the function.
Yeah.
And that works. That's fine. But I want to get rid of these two lines. So I wrote the same thing again here. The only difference is that I put text when I call the function. And I don't know why that gets good. And what am I doing wrong?
Yeah, I'm looking at that. Well, the run function, Jackie, I mean, he's on line 676. He's stored his text as, well, he's passing text instead of the variables to my function, but I don't, where is my, it's at the top, var1, var2.
Yeah, but my second function, I don't see any call. Yeah, okay, my second function there, yeah. And I don't see why that would break in the way that you have it now.
Well, let's see. There was somebody that was looking for how to hide your password. Everybody who knows my password. Ready? So here's my program that obfuscates my password. Basically, what it does is it hides everything as ASCII. So you type ASC and then whatever the ASCII value is, it will actually return the ASCII value. So that's how I obfuscate my password in my
Just an FYI, I mean, honestly, it is really hard to hear you. We can hear it very. Oh, that was better. I don't know what you did, but that's a lot better.
Just keep doing this then.
There you go. That's a lot better.
Okay then.
One thing I would consider as a general approach is when you're sending a lot of text, instead of using the send command, if it's just text, send a paste instead, right? It's an easy way to sometimes avoid having issues.
Yeah, but he wouldn't be able to do it as the ASCII value. Wouldn't
Fair
be
enough.
able to have that in the
But,
clipboard.
what command is that? Paste?
Well, you would send Control V. No, you would send Control V. So the caret, the thing above 6. Yeah, so that and V. So it'd be send, comma, and then, so yeah, send, comma, yeah. And then the caret, well, yeah, there you go. Yeah, so that would be sending a paste, right? So first you copy the stuff to the clipboard and then you can paste it. This is more when you have a lot of text, right? It comes in, it's really helpful. But Jackie's point, the ASCII characters, it would come out as probably the worst, not the ASC and numbers, not what you want.
Okay, all right.
I'm pretty sure I couldn't hear enough of what the issue was from your example code before. None of what I'm seeing on screen per se is errorsome directly, at least. I'm not seeing anything here that would break example 2.
Yeah, can we run it? We can't, unfortunately, we can't hear you when you're typing.
Oh, sorry. Yeah,
that's right. Get some duct tape and just hold it up.
Well, now it's not running at all anyway. You know what? I'm just going to have a better... I'm sure that I'm just missing something that's super obvious. I should look at it more closely.
But you had it. You basically had it right, is what Jackie's saying. Is it looked like it should have worked.
Now, is there any difference between single quotes and double quotes?
Yeah, single quotes won't work in that. Python, you can use either, but AutoHotkey, it's got to be double quotes.
Okay. Let's see. So where's this quote? Oh yeah, and then another problem that I've got is that I keep getting error messages that say I need to use a unique variable inside of my function. So to get around that, instead of just saying array, I take the name of the function and I stick it in front of all of my variables so that I get a unique variable. So that's why my variable is so long. Do you have any way around that? Or does
And
that,
that doesn't sound as if it's needed.
Yeah, so it's the
And
scope, right? It's
yeah, it doesn't make sense that it's. I wasn't able to exactly hear what error message you got, but
it was
of
something about
course.
here, let me generate the error. I'll put it back here. Okay, so this function now has variable names I've used in other parts of the script. I'm going to reload the script. And am I sharing my screen or just right now?
we saw a message box pop up for a split second.
It should be there somewhere.
Yeah, it's maybe it's behind the screen now. There we
Yeah,
go.
there. So it's a warning. You have warning turned on, apparently. This local variable has the same name as a global variable. And that's, of course, an issue. If you have global variables, you can't have local variables with the same name because a superglobal variable will, of course, be overridden as soon as you have. It's a good warning. But it's just a matter of you having a superglobal variable somewhere.
Well, the first question though, Jackie, is does it really matter, right? Because depending on how it's being used, it may not matter.
No, but I of course would say that if I had a superglobal variable called array and I overwrote that each time I dropped into a function that had the variable array, that wouldn't be something I was interested in. Okay. So what's at the top of yours? Because you have it apparently in an included file.
Yeah, Dimitri mentions that he'd have to remove the creds frm url func underscore.
Yeah, that's just because he needs to fix his variable names now. But in this, was it include home credentials? No, you were at something. This is home. Okay, so in the other one where you include that file, is this the one? You have a global variable somewhere further down the script or something?
Why don't you just search for global?
Zero hits.
But in SC Potion, I don't know if that's even related.
Oh, that's a separate search, I think. But here it's saying there is no, but it actually said that it was a global, and that just means it's outside of a function scope. So it could be any kind of variable that was called array outside a function. That's a possibility.
Yeah, but David, to Jackie's point, it may not. It's just, it can be where it's located also. I was just curious if someone had said global, that's inside a function, but this means now somewhere else. Actually, we know the name of the thing, right? Why don't we just search for the name of the, didn't we know the name of the function?
I didn't notice that. It's saying specifically URL address in function, so URL address.
Yeah, so
Apparently.
search for URL address. This is a good lesson of just troubleshooting, right? It's especially when using includes.
So I do have that CEC as 24 bits.
So 24 hits on line 21.
Well, let's see. So this is a notepad document. Oh yeah, so that's my function. Well, but see, that's not.
But you have a trim somewhere where it says line 126. Is that inside a function?
That is not. That's inside another.
Is that inside a label or is it inside a function? Can't hear it.
A label.
Oh, okay, okay. So it's a hot string. Fair enough. So that's probably why you were warned. But as you have commented out warn now, you probably won't be warned about it again. Because here it shouldn't actually matter, because something in the global space versus in the local space of a function, those two shouldn't interfere with one another. It's just if it had been a super global variable, that would have been an issue.
So can you launch it now?
Well, it should still give an error. But if I, and I think that's probably because, yeah, I've got something on that warns.
Yeah. You seem to have the warn directive on in all your files. So each time you have that in an include, warn will be turned on. So you'd either need, depending on what you wish for. I don't use warn, but people do tend to get good information from.
I don't know. I wish John had stayed on. John, it drove him batty for a while. He was not a fan. He was trying to do something, and it just was really not behaving.
Well, at least now in that direction data.
But you had 4 files that were included, right? So that's five places you need to look for warn. So there, yeah. And the next one? Yeah, you removed it there, yeah. This one, you haven't looked at the top. Doesn't seem to be there. How about the next one? Is that the top? There, warn, all. And I think you looked at the last one as well. So, yeah.
There we go. Okay, that fixed
Yeah. Of course, it could have been an issue, but in AutoHotkey, it probably wouldn't have had much impact. But yeah.
Wow, guys, thank you so much.
But still, this was a really good. It's a great thing to understand, especially with using includes. What's included in one, you got to check every file because when you use an include, it's basically having them in that file. So you got to think about it that way, right?
Thank you so much.
Anyone else have any other questions? Cool. Well, thank you all for signing on.
Yeah.
I forget who asked. Someone asked about the book names I had. I'll write them up and give some links just because it's not that hard. But I'll try to prioritize them in the what I thought of value wise. Some of them I'm like I would just throw them away. There were some very negative ones saying how the robots are going to take over the world.
But they are. No, fair enough. It's good, Joe.
All right. Thanks, everyone. We'll see you next month.
Yeah.
Bye.
Bye.